Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. How's Eddie Frederick?
So glad you can join us. Jamaica's no vote on the UN Gaza resolution described as unacceptable. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Wednesday, 1st November 2023, brought to you in association with our friends at Antillian Group. Details when we return.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all, perils big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's a service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Welcome back. The Opposition People's National Party expresses concern over Jamaica's non-support of the UN Gaza resolution. More from Nika Lewis of CVM News.
The Opposition People's National Party continues to oppose Jamaica's no vote over humanitarian matters arising from the Israel-Hamas war. In a statement, the party notes, despite Jamaica's role as the chair of the CARICOM Foreign Ministers Caucus, it failed to vote in support of the resolution, in contrast to CARICOM's agreed position. The PNP says that this absence of Jamaica's representation from this crucial vote is a new low in Jamaican foreign policy history. It went further, adding that the government's excuse for Jamaica's abstention in the vote is unsatisfactory. This as the Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Minister, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith, stated in a release that consultations did not conclude in time for Jamaica to participate. However, the opposition says that this explanation lacks merit, as consultations should have been timed to enable Jamaica to vote in favor of the resolution. This vote marked the UN General Assembly's first significant response to the humanitarian tragedy resulting from Israel's collective punishment of the civilian Palestinian population in Gaza. The PNP contends Jamaica's non-participation in support of such a significant resolution is inexcusable. It further concludes, this unfortunate episode gives the impression that the government of Jamaica is not interested in standing in solidarity with the suffering Palestinian civilians. We hope that this impression will be promptly and definitively dispelled by the government. There should be no reoccurrence of this major failure in our foreign policy conduct, end quote. Up to news time, CVM News was unsuccessful in getting any further comment on the matter from the government of Jamaica. Natalia Clark, CVM News.
As Jamaica progresses towards a digital economy, the demand for cybersecurity grows. The Jamaica Cyber Incident Response Team has reported that Jamaica is approaching nearly 2 terabytes per second of distributed denial of service DDoS traffic per attack in 2023. CVM's Joel Crossgill reports.
DDoS attacks, or distributed denial of service, are a type of cyber attack that aims to disrupt websites to make them unavailable for legitimate users by overwhelming them with more traffic than they can handle, potentially crippling their services.
Jamaica is under continuous attacks. So when we look at a general mapping, they are bombarding us continuously. We have at least provided some form of resilience. Some of the measures that we have implemented, we have been able to mitigate some of these attacks. Some of them have actually been successful. And our aim really is to reduce these attacks. We can't alleviate them completely. We can reduce them.
Millions of attacks each month. All of the malware that we saw, it was, the music sounded nice. But what the message was that we are under attack. And we are. Just as we've been having this event, there have been a lot of attempts at all of our systems. Public sector, private sector. They've all had attempts at attack this morning. That is our reality. And that is why we have to put the systems in place. We have to put the money there.
As well as expertise, some of which is courtesy of international partners, including the United States.
The U.S. government is deeply committed to partnering with Jamaica, a trusted ally and leader in the Caribbean, in its efforts to develop a robust, secure, and inclusive digital ecosystem and economy. Just last month, the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, began providing technical assistance to support the Office of the Prime Minister in establishing a national cybersecurity authority.
Former Army Chief Lieutenant General Rocky Meade, now Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, highlights the importance in seeking partnership on an issue that is of national security significance.
There's been significant rise in cybercrime incidents. I understand that there's over 60% increase in terms of what we have been monitoring and discovering. And I word it that way in particular because sometimes, many times we are not even aware of some of the things that are happening. There are some entities that will not report challenges because of the impact on their image. They'll just quietly deal with the matters.
Joel Crosskill, CVM News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick,
in association with our friends at
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley expresses disappointment and calls on the Judicial and Legal Service Commission to explain the wastage of $55 million of taxpayers' money on a new building to host the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution that remained unoccupied. TV6's Urvashitawari Rupnarayan filed this report.
I am very disappointed, hugely disappointed, and I think that something has to be radically wrong.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley on the expenditure of $55 million on the recently outfitted DPP's office, which remained unoccupied and unused.
The government was being accused of not providing the wherewithal for the department to function. But the government wants it to function. And of course, the government did the best that the government could do, which was to find executive office. That office was the executive headquarters of a bank.
Director of Public Prosecutions Roger Gaspard cited security risks for not occupying the building. The building is located in the most easterly part of Park Street.
Then we heard that there were security issues. We spent money strengthening the security. Bulletproof in here, this, that, there. We did all of that. At the end of the day, after we spent $55 million, a public servant could decide, I'm not going in there. Something has to be wrong with that. And as a taxpayer, I'm incensed that could have happened in Trinidad and Tobago.
However, the Prime Minister says he has seen special branch reports which do not justify the quote-unquote waste.
As a public official, I too am exposed to matters of risk and personal security. I do not know what the threat is to that particular office, which only exists when you're in that office. Because you use the roads, you use the market, you use the church, in your home. How come $55 million of risk only exists in that corner of that building?
He said other government offices cannot be made to occupy the building as a solution, and he questioned if one corner of the building is exposed to a threat, or one floor for that matter. Does that mean the entire building is so exposed?
I don't want to get into any fight with anybody, right? And I don't want to get into any disturbing conversation, but I just find that this is unacceptable. And the government did everything that the government could do. And as I speak to you now, nobody has justified to me how this happened.
Dr. Rowley does, however, see it as an act of insubordination, saying the Judicial and Legal Service Commission ought to answer to the public for the wastage.
That tells me that this whole question about who runs this country, who is in charge in this country, should be of concern to the population. Because if that could happen with that office, does this set a precedent for other officers?
A visibly infuriated Prime Minister eventually said he does not want to talk about it anymore. Urvashi Tiwari, Rupnarayan, TV6 News.
In the meantime, the controversy over $55 million being spent on the unoccupied Director of Public Prosecution's office continues to gain traction. Former President of the Senate, Attorney Timothy Hamel-Smith, says criminals are the only ones who win in this matter. Asha Galston of TV6 News reports.
We haven't heard from the DPP, so we don't know the other side of the equation. The people who suffer the loss are the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It is alarming that this has happened. I think the Prime Minister is right. We are all alarmed.
Mr. Hamel-Smith says the issue is not one of pointing fingers, but some sort of explanation is needed. At the same time, he notes that DPP Senior Counsel Roger Gaspard is not known to engage in public spats.
I'm not in a position to say point fingers as to who is responsible. As a civil servant, you don't come out and make public statements out. And the DPP certainly appears to me to be a person who has always batted well within his crease, if I may use that term.
The DPP's role is crucial when it comes to the criminal justice system, says Hamel-Smith. And if the claims of the office being understaffed are true, then the only winners are the criminals.
I think the country deserves to know. And the criminal justice system, really, nobody could be happy with that, no matter what side of the equation you're on. And therefore, the only people who benefit from all of this debacle is, in fact, criminals themselves. So they must be laughing. We become a laughing stock, if you like.
Aksha Galston, TV6 News.
In another item out of Port of Spain, Senior Counsel Martin Daly is weighing in on the appeal court's ruling that reinstates Marcia Ayres Caesar as a High Court judge, following a 6-year battle with the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. He says don't blame Ayres Caesar for the fiasco that embroiled her. More from Nicole M. Ramani of TV6 News.
Senior Counsel Daly admits someone dropped the ball with regard to the full disclosure of Ayres Caesar's part-heard matters, but, in his estimation, the proper checks should have been done.
There was a significant failure of due diligence. Then, of course, the problem having arisen, they then set about trying to fix it. And indeed, Justice Barrow calls it a quick fix. They then tried a quick fix by all of these coercive means. And we now have a situation where Marcia Ayres Caesar remains High Court judge in office. And I don't know what's going to happen when the 21-day stay expires. So there are all these angles. And it's just quite shameful.
He describes the entire situation as an elementary mistake. Daly Senior Counsel believes the discussion among the lawyers is the only way forward.
The lawyers for both sides, if they're not appealing, then the lawyers for both sides must sit down and negotiate a final resolution of the matter. That's the only way. Either you appeal, and then you wait the outcome of the appeal, or you sit down and decide, okay, what the GLSC side has to say, well, we have lost the case, the court has said so and so, you have won the case. Now let us decide how we are going to work this out so we can have a final resolution of the matter. I don't see any other way.
He tells TV6 the population will pay for this error.
They will arrive at some solution eventually, make us the taxpayer a lot of money. They'll arrive at some solution eventually which may make the unfortunate outcome go away on this particular occasion. It leaves open trust and confidence for the future, and it leaves open the constant problem we have in Trinidad. When Trinidad and Tobago, when something goes wrong, there's not only no accountability in the general sense, but there are no sanctions.
Nicole M. Romani, TV6 News.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean.
In the meantime, please follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily regional news and more, in association with our friends at Antillian Group.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so glad to see. Peace of mind, that's a service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.